Hey kids, welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 8, Loops Make. Kids, this is probably the least amount of code or directions you've had and probably the most amount of code you've had to write. Do not worry. Take a deep breath. Think back to all of the lessons we've done on 7. And as long as you apply those things we learned, we've pretty much wrote the code already. And if you're still having troubles, you're here and we're going to walk through it. So we're going to be fine, kids. We're going to be perfectly fine. How do we tackle something like this, kids? For me, what I like to do is understand what we need to do and then start programming from there. Sounds kind of logical, doesn't it? As to what do we have to do? Well, over here, we have our app. We have what looks like 20 different icons. These are blank right now. I have these buttons, color, location, and shapes. And what I remember from the previous lesson here, that when I hit colors, it changed the background color and the color of whatever the shape was. The locations made it go to a random location, and the shapes made it to a different shape. And I think that's a list over here. That means we're going to have to code in something that makes colors random, something that makes a location random. And it wasn't just a location, kids. It was also the size of it. And then the shape function. On top of that, we need to deal with these buttons. So we're going to have to do something when we hit these buttons. I think, kids, how I'm going to try to attack it is I'm going to start with shapes because I like seeing things and then adding on to it as I go. That means I'm going to start with a shape and I think a function to create an image to one of these and then work down from there. And I think while working through it, that'll help out. So I'm going to do the shape and then I'll do the button, then I'll move on to the next. Does that sound like a good idea to you, kids? Well, let's start with the function I was just talking about. And our function here, well, that's going to be called a random shape. Random shape. And in our random shape, kids, what we want to do is we want to call to this list here. So if you look up here, this is our heart, music, smile, globe, tree, bolt, moon, star. These are all of the different images we've gotten. So we've already got the list. It's already pointed towards a picture. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. That means what we have to do is pretty much pick one of these. And if you remember back, kids, we had some code that did this. That was when we created a new variable. We set it to the length of a list. And remember, kids, the list went from 0 because that's how computers count. We humans count as 1. So we did that length minus 1 thing. Then we did a for loop and we called towards that image. And that worked really well for that project. So I think that's what I'm going to do here. Well, what did I do? Well, again, I'm just going to make a new variable and this is going to be called a random icon. And that is just going to be set to the icons list above right there. So it's just pointing up to here. And what I wanted to do is to go into that list and I just wanted to pick a random one. And we have this random number button here, kids. We can put that in. And where do we want our list to go from? Well, 0, because that's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We could put 7 in here, kids, but what happens if I want to add more images? Remember, it's always better to soft code it in. So I'm going to go icons list.length minus 1. Because again, if we counted 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but if we go down here to 7 here, really 7 here is something that doesn't exist. So we're just matching up between the 0 and the 1. We're just subtracting 1, kids. Well, that's it. And then we did a for loop. And all this does is just let us progress through the different images, kids. So I'm just going to do a variable. And this is going to be S for shape, and this is going to be equal to 0. And as long as S is greater than 2, we're just going to go I++. Once we go down there, what are we going to do? Well, we are going to set the property of an icon. And I'm going to do, I think, icon 0 here. So I'm going to go to set property. And if you go to our set property here, remember we have the ID, the property, and the values. And if you start typing these out, kids, we can do, the first one is just going to be the icon 0, which is this one right here. And if you did the drop-down menu and we can go to the blocks, you'll notice that one of the things we can do is an image. So we just want to make that an image. And that needs to be our variable we set up here, random icon. That should be an S, kids. I was using I for iterations. I shouldn't do that. That gives up here to a random icon. So anytime random shape is called, and we haven't called it yet, kids, let's go up here and just do our calls. These are going to be our functions. Functions, get it, kids? And this is going to be random shape, like that. Every time I hit run now, one of these should go to a random shape in here. So let's hit run. Hey, we got a little tree. If I hit reset run, got a star. I can't do anything with shapes yet, kids, because I haven't programmed that button. We'll do that in here in a second. But as you can see, every time I run it. Now, kids, we have to think back to the last lesson there. And when we did our lists, we could use that plus whatever iteration we were on. So we could do it across all of them. So right now, how my variable is set to 2, I can really just set this icon list. Why are we going to use a for loop, kids? Well, ultimately, I don't want to set this to just one of these icons. I want to set it to all of them. And I'm going to show you here by just setting it to 2 initially. We're going to come back to this a little later, but I think it's a little helpful if you see it only happen to a couple instead of seeing it happen to all of them at once. So right now we're going to set this S to 2, but we're going to come back and set it to 20 because ultimately, well, that's the number of icons we have. So if you remember, that went across the list, and we can demonstrate that by doing this to 2, right? We can do our icon plus 2. So this will circle through, do icon 1, icon 2, icon 3, blah, 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 blah. But we're just going to stop it at 2. So when I hit run here, hopefully, what happens is I should get a couple of images. Let's see. Well, kids, here's the thing you're thinking. It's only coming up 1, Mr. Rhodes, isn't it? Well, not really. We haven't changed a location, kids. So there's a bunch stacked onto each other. So we can't see it yet. What we have to do is change location. And I think that's a good one to lead us to next. So let's do our location button so we can see how many we're doing. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do another function here, kids. And this one's going to be called a random location. And this one is going to be for the size, right? So we're going to have to set the property of a couple different things. And we're going to do the same thing as above. We're going to create a variable, and then we're going to use the variable. But we have to create our for loop too. And we're just going to do this again for 2 just so we can demonstrate this. So our variable, and for this one, I'm going to do location. So we're going to do variable L, and that is equal to 0. And then as long as L is less than 2, we are going to L plus plus. And that'll progress us through our loop. Now we have to create, just like above, a variable. But for this one, we're going to do it inside the loop because we want it to be random every time. We don't want a different image every time we go through the loop. We'd end up with 20 different images. So on this one, we're going to put that variable on the inside. And this is just going to be a random size. And that's going to be equal to a random number. And that random number is going to be between, well, let's not make it too tiny. We'll do 30. And the screen across here is 320. We don't want to get that giant. Let's say like 200 kids. Nothing too crazy. And at this point, we now have to set the property. And what we can do is we can set the property width and height. So let's go ahead and we can just drag, well, we can just type it out, kids. It's probably easier for me. We're going to go to a set property. And in this one, we are going to set icon. And we're going to do the same as above because we're going to demonstrate what this loop actually does. So we're going to do a +2. And then we are doing our width now. And the width is going to be that random size we just made. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do another set property. And this time we have one too many commas there, kids. And this time we're going to do height. We have an error right here. Kids, my error here. These should be semicolons. That is an old habit from Java. Just keep that in mind. I'm sure I'm going to make this a lot in Java. Use commas. Here, use semicolons. So just be aware of that. Our last error here, kids. It's going to tell me this hasn't been called yet. So we're just going to up here to a random location. And our semicolon there. We can clean up our code here a little, kids. And there we go. Now when I run, I should get a couple up here. Let's see. Kids, let's take care of the location next. So let's go to set properties here. And let's do, well, let's go down here back to our blocks. Maybe this might be easier to see in blocks. I'm going to drag in my blocks here. And I'm going to do my icon. And right now 0, I'm going to go back and fix that. But you can see we can do X and Y here. And we can also do our height and everything as you go there. What we want to do is we want to put a random number though, kids, over here. And we want that random number to be what? Well, we never want it to go too far over. So I would say we'll go somewhere around 20. And we never want to go anywhere past 320. So let's take 20. We'll do 20 and 300. That was the X. We can just do one more, do that set property over here. We're doing that icon 0. We're going to do Y. And then this time our random numbers are going to be, again, I would say 20 and then maybe 400. Well, we never want to get over the shapes. Well, maybe we do, kids. Let's do 20 and 400. Nice round numbers. Let's go back to our text here. Let's do our icon +2 here. And now when we run, we should see 2. Hopefully, kids. Let's see. Well, let's think about this, kids. We're starting at 0. We go to 1. We're only getting 1. Let's increase our numbers here. Let's go up to 5. And we're going to change this to +5, 2. And then we're going to go to 5 here. Now we should get a couple more shapes, kids. Let's go to 20. Let's see if that's a mistake. Look, my demonstration, kids, is not working here like I planned. Well, kids, it's probably not working because I have to set it equal to the number that I called not a physical number, kids. So my demonstration should work. I just have to use the proper thing. Kids, what was I thinking? And then one more. Everybody's getting in my way here. There we go. So now you can see we're going to go to whatever icon plus whatever iteration we were on. I was just putting a number that was going to that specific icon in the order, kids, not doing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we should get, let's go. Well, the random shapes, kids, we should just really do this to 20 because it could be any one of these. And now let's do let's do 5 first here. Let's see what happens, kids. Reset, run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we got 5. So now you see, kids, what this icon plus is doing is actually adding towards it. So that's why it's important. Now, if we go back to 20 here, kids, we should get all of them. So reset, run. Woo, they go everywhere. And random locations and shapes. But that's kind of boring, kids. The colors needed to be brought. So I think we should add our last one here, our colors function. We're going to do another function. And this is going to be a random color. And for this one, what we're going to do is 2 different things. One, if you remember, there is actually a different color to the home screen because the white's kind of boring, kids. It's a basic. So we're going to do something a little different there. And we're going to change the colors of the icon. So we're going to do it in 2 different ways. We're going to have the background outside the for loop, kind of like our shapes, because we want the shape to be listed once, not 20 different ones. Just by moving this line in here, we could make it 20 different shapes. So we're going to make it outside of it. So let's first just set the property. Let's go back over to our blocks. And let's do our set property here. And for this one, we want to do whatever the home screen is. And for the home screen, what do we want to do? Well, we want the background color. And what do we want the background color? Well, we want it to be some RGB sweetness. But kids, again, we could be so much funner. Is that a word? If we just use random numbers, and we can just do 0 to 255. And we just rinse and repeat. Red, we did. We're doing green now. And blue left. Remember that last number is your opacity. That is how light or see through your image is. And I don't want that to be quite that. I'm going to do like a 0.2 or something like that. So what we did there, kids, was just set the color of the home screen. We're going to do the same thing as we did above. We're going to do our for loop. That means we have 4, and this time we're going to do the variable on this one is C for color. As long as C is less than 0, we're going to keep progressing through. How long? Well, as long as it's less than 20, because that's the only pictures we got. Oh, remember, kids, semicolons there. And then we're just going to go C++. After that, we have our little curly Q. And now we're just setting the property. We don't need to make a variable because we're not going to make a random size for both the height or the width there to store that. So we can just do a regular set property here, kids. And we're going to go to set property. And this one, we are going to do icon. Well, we're just going to do just as above, just icon, but we're going to do it plus C. This one is going to be the next property is icon color. And after icon color, we're just going to do the RGB over here. And kids, really, I can just copy this whole line right above it and paste it in right here because it's the same RGB. This time, though, I want a little opacity. I want some light, some dark. So I'm going to go all the way up to 0.5. Don't forget the zeros in front there. They like whole numbers. At this point, kids, I have my function. I don't have my call. So I'm going to go random color like that. Now when I hit run, look at that, kids. I get a bunch of different colors and stuff, but I still got one problem. I can't do anything yet. I have to run it by hitting reset. And kids, that's no fun, is it? So let's add another section here. And, well, let's go beneath our calls. We always want our calls up top. I want it after here. Well, no, kids. We should keep our calls and our functions together. Let's go down here and do our buttons. And for our buttons, kids, this is going to be pretty easy. This is going to be like the update screen, but instead of using update screen, kids, we're just going to use the same call that we used up here. Pretty neat. So really all we're going to do is we're just going to take a on event down here. We're going to drag it down here. I'm going to hit a bunch of returns, kids. We'll come back and fix this in a bit, but we're getting a little low down here. And for this one, let's start with just the color button. So the ID color button. And when that clicks, what do we want to have happen? Well, we just want to go up here and call our random color, our last one. So we're just going to type in a random color, just like that. Every time I hit that color button, that's what should happen. Let's see if that's what happens, kids. Let's run. Whoop, looks like we got an error here. Looks like color button doesn't exist. It's colors button, kids. Make sure your spelling's right. Oops, let's clear this off. Run it again. Now when we hit random colors, it goes random to color locations, kids. How fun. And we could do some other stuff here. We can also play a sound because that's kind of boring, kids. And let's reset this. Go to play a sound. Ooh, don't want to dump that in there. In fact, we're going to go over to blocks for this one. And the sound we want to play, let's go to choose. You can't see this, kids. That sounds pretty good there. And let's go back to our show text. Well, let's run. How fun is that, kids? Let's reset it. We're almost done. Really, what we have to do is just the same thing for the next one. So on the event over here, the next one is locations button. That one right there, we might as well just click on it, kids, because probably spell it wrong. And then we do our function. like that. And our curly bracket. We are going to do, let's just do the same play sound, kids. Let's not search for a bunch. And this one, what are we doing to this one? Well, we want random location. So the same one from above. And let's just go ahead and do that. The last one, I'm going to copy almost all this, kids. Actually, we should just drag this in as the proper way to do it. Last one is shapes. Let's go and see if we can find that one. Look at all this, kids. Woo, so much. I don't see it. It is shapes button. And the same thing, we're going to play this sound. And this one is just going to be a random shape. Like that. Now that should all call up there, kids. Let's run. Whoop, shapes button, kids. Look at that. Shapes button. Let's go down and spell this right. Classic roads, kids. Classic roads. Shapes button. Oh. All right, let's run it now. Random colors. Random locations. Random shapes. How fun is that? And kids, again, if we wanted to make the shapes here completely random, if we just take this line of code 18 and boop, put it inside there and take that out right there and run, see, we get a bunch of random shapes. So that's why we do it on the other way, kids. So just wanted to make sure you knew that. The last thing you want to do, just clean up your code a little. Make sure it's all commented out. I have like a million different lines here, so I'm going to delete a couple of them. And this looks pretty good, kids. If you turn this in, this is definitely an A. And everything works pretty well. As always, if you have any questions, you can come see me. Otherwise, kids, I'll see you on the next video. See you later, kids. Bye. Bye. See you later.